A woman approaches the throne, uninvited. Each step could be her last. Persian law is absolute. Approach the king without summons, and you die. Unless he extends the golden scepter. Unless he chooses mercy. Esther hasn't been called to his presence in 30 days. 30 days of silence. 30 days that suggest she's fallen from favor. Yet here she stands, in the inner court, visible to the king seated on his royal throne. Her heart pounds. Behind her lies 3 days of fasting, no food, no water. Ahead lies either death or deliverance, not just for her, for every Jew in the Persian Empire. From India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces, millions of people marked for annihilation in 11 months. King Ahasuerus looks up, sees her, his face unreadable. This moment balances on the edge of genocide or survival, on whether a beauty queen will risk everything for a people she's kept hidden, on whether an orphaned girl from a conquered nation can save her people from extinction. Esther had said the words 3 days ago, steeling herself for this. If I perish, I perish. But this moment doesn't begin here. It begins with a drunken party and a queen who said no. Act 1. The queen who refused. When saying no cost everything. The story opens in the 3rd year of Xerxes I's reign, 483 BCE, at Susa, the winter capital of the Persian Empire. For 180 days, King Ahasuerus, Xerxes, displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor of his majesty to nobles, officials, and military leaders. At the end of the 6-month display, Ahasuerus threw a 7-day banquet in the palace garden for all the people of Susa. The men drank from golden goblets, each one different. Wine flowed freely. On the 7th day, drunk and wanting to show off, the king commanded his 7 eunuchs to bring Queen Vashti before him, wearing her royal crown, to display her beauty to the people and nobles. Vashti refused. Her reasons aren't stated. Perhaps she objected to being paraded before drunken men like a trophy. Perhaps she understood the command as degrading. The book of Esther is best read as a satiric melodrama filled with entertaining reversals, ironies, parodies of the great Persian court, and exaggerations. The king was furious. His advisors warned him that Vashti's disobedience would become known to all women, causing them to despise their husbands. They recommended she be banished and her royal position given to someone better. Queen Vashti, the wife of King Ahasuerus, is banished from the court for disobeying the king's orders. A royal edict went throughout the empire, declaring every man master of his household. The first queen disappeared from the narrative, her voice silenced, her fate unknown. But the empire needed a queen. Act 2. The beauty pageant. When survival requires silence. Seeking a new queen, the king appointed commissioners to bring all the beautiful young virgins from every province into his harem for a year of cosmetic treatments, so that he might select a new bride. In Susa lived a Jewish man named Mordecai from the tribe of Benjamin. He was the cousin and adopted father of Esther, Hebrew name Hadassah, whose parents had died. Esther was exceptionally beautiful. When the king's edict was proclaimed, Esther was taken to the palace along with many other young women. She was placed under the care of Hegai, the king's eunuch in charge of the women. Esther found favor with Hegai. He provided her with beauty treatments, special food, and 7 female attendants. He moved her to the best place in the harem. But Esther kept her Jewish identity secret, as Mordecai had instructed her. In a Persian empire that had allowed Jews to return to Jerusalem, being Jewish wasn't illegal. But Mordecai understood something. In the volatile, chaotic world of palace politics, revealing too much could be dangerous. For 12 months, the young women underwent beauty preparations, 6 months with oil of myrrh, 6 months with perfumes and cosmetics. Each girl received one mite with the king. Whatever she wanted to take with her from the harem, she was given. She would go in the evening and return the next morning to a different part of the harem. She would not return to the king unless he delighted in her and summoned her by name. When Esther's turn to go before the king, he immediately found her the most attractive and beautiful of all women, and placed the royal crown on her head. Ahasuerus fell in love with her and made her his queen. The king held a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with royal liberality. But Esther still told no one she was Jewish. Act 3. The Assassins and the Villain. When loyalty goes unrewarded. One day, Mordecai was sitting by the king's gate when he overheard 2 guards named Bigthana and Teresh conspiring to assassinate King Xerxes. Mordecai told Queen Esther of the plot, and Esther told the king, giving credit to Mordecai. The matter was investigated, found to be true, and the 2 conspirators were hanged. This act of great service to the king was recorded in the annals of the kingdom. Then, nothing. Mordecai received no reward, no recognition, no honor. The act was recorded and forgotten. Meanwhile, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the Agagite, to the highest position above all the other nobles. Haman's epithet, Agagite, indicates he was a descendant of Agag, king of the Amalekites, ancient enemies of the Jews, going back to King Saul's time. Haman meant a talent of silver into the royal treasury, an astronomical sum. The king removed his signet ring and gave it to Haman. Keep the money, do with the people as you please. Using the seal of the king, Haman sent an order to all provinces to allow the extermination of the Jews, young and old, women and children, on the 13th of Adar, and to plunder their goods. Couriers rushed the decree throughout the empire. The city of Susa was bewildered. And Mordecai tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went through the city, wailing loudly and bitterly.
Act 5. The Crisis of Conscience. Who knows if you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? When Esther's eunuchs told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him, but he refused them. So she sent Hathach, one of her attendants, to find out what was troubling Mordecai. Mordecai told him everything. He gave him a copy of the edict and told him to urge Esther to go to the king to beg for mercy for her people. Esther sent back a message. All the king's officials know that anyone who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned faces the penalty of death unless the king extends his golden scepter. And I have not been summoned to appear before the king for 30 days. Mordecai sent back this reply: Do not imagine that you are safe in the king's palace, you alone of all the Jews. Even if you now remain silent, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from another source, but you and your father's house will perish. Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? The words hung in the air. This moment, this crisis, this was why she was here. Not for beauty, not for luxury, not for safety, for this. Esther's character comes to the fore. Following Mordecai's insistent prodding, she resolves to do what she can to save her people. Esther responded, "Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." 3 days, no food, no water, just preparation to die. Act 6, The Sleepless Night, when providence disguises itself as insomnia. On the 3rd day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court. The king extended his golden scepter to her, saying, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? Even if it is half of my kingdom, it shall be granted you." Esther didn't blurt out her request. She had risked death to speak, but now she delayed. "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to a banquet I have prepared." At the banquet, the king again asked her request. Again she delayed. "Tomorrow let the king and Haman come to the banquet I will prepare, then I will answer." Why the delay? Perhaps she needed Haman present to accuse him. Perhaps she needed the king in a receptive mood. Perhaps she sensed divine timing required waiting. Haman left the banquet happy, but became enraged again when Mordecai refused to bow. He called his wife and friends together to boast about his wealth, his sons, and being the only person besides the king invited to Esther's banquet. Then he revealed his deep shallowness. All of it brought him no joy as long as Mordecai still lived. His wife Zeresh suggested he build a pole 75 feet high on which to impale Mordecai before the banquet. This was not a modern gallows, but an impaling stick, a common form of execution in the Persian Empire. Haman loved the idea. That night, the king couldn't sleep. He asked that the annals of the kingdom be read to him. The book miraculously opened to the page telling of Mordecai's great service in exposing the assassination plot. "What honor and recognition has been given to Mordecai for this?" the king asked. "Nothing has been done for him," his attendants answered. "Who is in the court?" the king asked. It was Haman, arriving early to request permission to impale Mordecai. The king invited him in. Who should be done for the man the king delights to honor? Haman thought, who would the king want to honor more than me? He described an elaborate ceremony, royal robes, the king's horse, a noble leading the man through the streets proclaiming, "This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor." "Go at once," the king commanded. "Do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew." After spending the entire day honoring Mordecai, Haman rushed to Esther's second banquet, where Ahasuerus was already waiting. Act 7, The Revelation. This wicked Haman. Ahasuerus again offered Esther anything up to half of the kingdom. Esther revealed that there was a person plotting to kill her and her entire people. "Who is he? Where is he who has dared to do such a thing?" the king demanded. Esther pointed to Haman, an adversary, an enemy, this wicked Haman. Haman was terrified. An enraged Ahasuerus went out to the garden to calm down and consider the situation. While he was gone, Haman threw himself at Esther's feet, begging for mercy. When the king returned and saw Haman falling on the couch where Esther reclined, he was further enraged, thinking Haman was attacking the queen. One of the eunuchs said, "A pole standing 50 cubits high is at Haman's house. He had it set up for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king." The king ordered, "Hang him on it." So they impaled Haman on the pole he had prepared for Mordecai. but the edict still stood. Act 8. The Counter Decree. Permission to defend. Queen Esther and Mordecai were given Haman's estate. Mordecai received the king's signet ring. But the decree to annihilate the Jews remained law, sealed with the king's seal. Esther approached the king again, falling at his feet and weeping. She begged him to reverse Haman's plan. But Persian law was absolute. Once sealed with the king's ring, a decree could not be revoked. Unable to annul a formal royal decree, the king instead added to it, permitting the Jews to join forces and destroy any armed force that might attack them and their families. Mordecai was honored with royal garments, and a decree was written to protect all Jews. The new decree went out by mounted couriers riding fast horses. The Jews had permission to defend themselves. On the 13th of Adar, Haman's 10 sons and 500 other men were killed in Susa. On hearing this, Esther requested it be repeated the next day, whereupon 300 more men were killed. In the other provinces, 75,000 people were killed by the Jews, who were careful to take no plunder. The 14th of Adar became a day of feasting and joy. Epilogue. The Woman Who Saved a Nation. The secular character of the Book of Esther, the divine name, is never mentioned, and its strong nationalistic overtones made its admission into the biblical canon highly questionable for both Jews and Christians. Yet it endures. There is no reference to known historical events in the story. A general consensus has maintained that the narrative was invented to provide an etiology for Purim. The historicity of this biblical episode, and whether or not Esther actually existed, has often been questioned. But the power of the story transcends historicity. The Book of Esther is unique because, although Mordecai has an important role, it is ultimately Esther, a woman, who saves her people. This choice of a female hero serves an important function. Women were essentially powerless and marginalized members of society. Remember the opening. Esther approaching the throne uninvited. 3 days of fasting behind her. Death or deliverance ahead. If I perish, I perish. She didn't perish, but she was willing to, and that made all the difference. Every year at Purim, Jews read the Megillah, the scroll of Esther. When Haman's name is read, they make noise, blotting out his memory. When Esther's courage is recounted, they cheer. The story is a satiric melodrama to be recited or dramatized, inviting readers to cheer on the heroes, to laugh at the foolish king, and to boo the wicked villain. Esther's story raises enduring questions about identity, risk, and purpose. The Book of Esther raises questions about how to live as a Jew in diaspora. When do you hide your identity? When do you reveal it? When is silence wisdom? When is it cowardice? Mordecai's words echo across millennia. Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Perhaps you're in your position, whatever it is, for such a time as this. Perhaps your moment of crisis is your moment of purpose. Perhaps the thing you're most afraid to do is exactly what you're meant for.